Hello chess friends and welcome to your Out of Chess channel and welcome back to our Queen's Gambit Declined studies. So in this studies we have seen some great openings and great defenses after the first moves d4, d5 and c4, and today we're continuing with our Queen's Gambit Declined studies and the so-called Sämisch Variation. The Sämisch Variation we have started recently. So far we have covered 3 videos about this particular opening, about this particular sideline as a part of our Queen's Gambit Declined studies. And if you're a little bit lost in this whole Queen's Gambit Declined playlist, the playlist is set up like this. We have more than 80 videos in our Queen's Gambit Declined studies. The first videos are about the Harvard's attack. We have seen the Chigorin defense, Tarrasch defense, Semi-Tarrasch and many more. And the last videos, the videos at the bottom, are the Sämisch Variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined, and this is now our 4th video about this particular sideline. And I think it has to be solved more, because there was one problem that I've been asked now many times to do here on my YouTube chess channel, and it's this h3 sideline. Because in the Sämisch Variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined, we have seen the bishop to f4 move was very annoying to handle, and there is this idea of white when white is trying to make the move h3 and then is trying to hide with the bishop to h2. If you have still questions about this particular sideline, please also check out the previous video, because in the previous video we have explained why actually white is going with the move bishop to f4. Why is white trying to play the game very aggressively like this. So let's see now how to play against this h3 sideline. In my opinion, very important sideline, because this sideline could bother you. White is having here really good positional ideas, so that's why in this video we're solving this particular idea. So let's see now again what is the Queen's Gambit Declined, what is this exchange variation, and what is the Sämisch variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined. So here the first move is of course the move d4, and the instructive game that we'll see today is a beautiful game played by Yu Yangi versus Ding Liren. Who knows, maybe in the future Ding Liren could become the world champion in chess, because he's playing of course his world championship match against Jan Nepomniachtchi. Let's see now how he handled the Sämisch Variation with his sideline with the beautiful move h3. So here c4, e6, we have here knight to f3, the counter in Nimzo or an anti-Nimzo Indian, but we're going now into the Queen's Gambit Declined with the move d5. Knight to c3, so we have now the 3 knight variation, and now comes this idea knight to d7. This is now the so-called Barman variation, and the cool part about this move knight to d7 is that actually we are delaying the bishop's move. We are not playing with the bishop on f8 so far. We still have a certain flexibility. We can go bishop to e7, bishop to d6, bishop to b4, and similar stuff. So we're delaying, we're waiting white now to make a reaction, because the cool part about this delaying move with the move knight to d7 is that actually white has to play somewhere with the bishop. If he plays with the bishop here to b4, then we can play bishop to g5 part, and then we still can go with bishop to b4, hitting also the knight on c3. If he goes bishop to f4, then we have to reach the Sämisch variation, but if he goes e3, then of course he's locking his bishop here if he wants to of course develop in a good way. So that's why here after move knight from b to d7, many times you see now the exchange variation by white, and that was our analysis so far in this series. So e takes d5, and now comes this idea. The Sämisch variation is now after the move bishop to f4, and the idea is clear. That was our cornerstone position. Knight to b5 is the serious threat, hitting the pawn on c7, so that's why you have to play now the move c6. And now comes the sideline, the new sideline that we're studying today. Yesterday we have covered this particular sideline. Again, let's repeat. If your opponent is playing the move e3, then my recommendation is to go knight to h5 and simply attack the bishop. If of course bishop to g5 happens, then we'll simply play bishop to e7, queen to e7, and then we have a good control of the e4 square. So that was our analysis yesterday. So in that video we have covered this bishop to g5 sideline. But now white, instead of this move e3, can go of course h3, and this idea is clear. Like in the London system, I think the h3 move is really common in the London system when white is trying to leave himself sort of a square for the bishop. Now the bishop is targeting the h2, and white is trying to play bishop to h2 and stay on this very active diagonal, of course on the dark square diagonal. But the downside about this particular sideline is that actually the bishop is not defending the knight on c3, and it's also not defending the weak pawn on b2. So the bishop is out, and that's now our time now maybe to attack the position, because with the move h3, okay, you have created some kind of an idea. You have created yourself really an important square for the bishop, but you have lost also tempo. And you see now the power of the tempo in the opening stage, because whenever you play just maybe a necessary move like this, like the move h3, okay, as I said, it creates an idea, but it's not the perfect idea. Now it's simply time to strike immediately. We have to be now aggressive, because our opponent lost simply a really beautiful time in the opening stage, and now, like Dingliren, for instance, he played now this particular sideline, which would be also here my recommendation to go aggressively with the move knight to e4. And there are many things that white can do. We're analyzing now as much as we can, because we cannot cover, of course, everything, but let's see the obvious first idea here by white. Let's see what happens if white plays now the move knight to e4. After knight to e4, of course, d takes e4 happens, and comes with the tempo against the knight again. There are now again several things that white can do. If, for instance, knight to e5 happens, then we simply pick up the knight to e5, and now after bishop to e5 the game is lost, because bishop to b4 is simply trapping the queen, so it's game over here for white. So that's why you have to take with the pawn. But as we said, the dark square problems are here huge tactical problem in the continuation. Now we're attacking simply the weak pawn on b2, and there is simply no good defense anymore against this stuff, because bishop to b4 is also now a huge tactical threat. You could maybe try rook to b1, protecting everything, but look at this, what happens. Bishop to b4, look at this, bishop to f5, we just developed a piece, we're trying to play the move e3, hitting the rook on b1. For instance, if white plays really a bad move, then we have even queenside casting, continue the pressure here, so it's really a devastating position here for white. So let's go back. After move knight to e4, d takes e4, okay, white could go also here with the move knight to d2, hitting the pawn on e4, but it causes again new tactical problems, because simply we can play knight to f6, protecting the pawn on e4. Now probably white will go with the move e3, trying finally to develop the bishop. Here's trying also to castle, but now again we have time to play aggressively here in the center with knight to d5, hitting the bishop on f4. If, of course, here something like bishop to e5 happens, then f6, the bishop has to retreat, bishop to b4 again, queen to a5. This is, I think, really a solid game now for black. So what white could do maybe after move knight to d5 is, of course, to take out the pawn on e4, but this would be again a suicide for white, because bishop to b4 hits the king. You have to play knight to d2 now, but now with knight to f4, e takes f4, queen to d4, white is losing the game for sure. We have an active here bishop pair, the king is stuck in the center, the weak pawn is here on f4, we have also weak pawn on b2, so white is facing many darker problems here, so it's simply, in my opinion, game over here for white. Really incredible stuff that after move knight to e4, it's really hard to take out the knight. You face really many tactical problems. So after move knight to e4, your opponent could do is maybe here the move e3. After move e3, we're playing still with our pinning idea, because now the bishop is locked. The bishop cannot compete. The bishop cannot get into the defense and defend the knight on c3. With bishop to b4, I think we create again new opportunities. Of course, white can play rook to c1. It's not that you trap the knight, it's not that you gain material, but I think we have here really solid active play. We play now kingside casting, bishop to d3 is probably white's continuation, rook to e8, kingside casting, and now with queen to e7. This is, in my opinion, perfectly fine. There are even opportunities maybe to be really aggressive with g5, f5, g4, and similar stuff. I think we have good control in the center of the board. We have a good grip around the square e4. That's, I think, now the most important thing here to say. And we have also a problem for white. White already weakened the pawn structure with the move h3 in the beginning. So there are tactical threats. As I said, with the move g4, we want to break and enter here now on this side of the board. If we get maybe challenged, again, retreating to d6 is also good, because we still have the powerful control of the e4, which we had also in our previous analysis here in the Sämisch variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined. So let's go back. After move knight to e4, your opponent could try maybe queen to b3, because he's threatened by this idea of bishop to b4. But now we go queen to b6. We can simplify the game. enough, I think, here for black. Now after something like knight to e4, we hit first the queen, queen takes b3, a takes b3. Now we take out the knight on e4, of course knight to d2, but now with bishop to b4 we can again create tactical damage. White, pardon me, after bishop to b4, white can maybe escape, but now with knight to f6 we can protect everything. Bishop to g5, and now with bishop to d3, I think again this is a solid game. So don't worry so much, I think, to simplify the game by trading off the queens, because we have seen the activity that you gain here with the black pieces is perfectly fine here. So let's go back in the game between Yu Yangi and Ding Liren. Yu Yangi played an aggressive queen to c2, but you see now the power about this move, knight to e4. Now Ding really played the most aggressive move, played bishop to b4, continued the pressure around this knight and c3. We have now the move a3, and now he proceeded with queen to a5. We have still this powerful attack against the knight on c3. In the continuation, Yu Yangi tried bishop to d2, but now after knight to d2, we have bishop to e7 here by Ding, and he's trying now normal ideas. Of course, knight to f6, controlling the e4, kingside casting, liberating somehow the long diagonal for the light square bishop. So again, I think a solid game for black. I'm not saying this is winning, but at least you have, I think, at least equalized the game. You have the beautiful bishop pair on the board. The position is not blocked or closed, so that you cannot still open the position. So it's a sort of a position that still can explode, and of course the bishops would be good in these types of structures. So many times you have maybe a bishop pair, but the position is so blocked out, it's so paralyzed that you don't have activities with the bishop. But here I think it's a perfect game for the bishop. So here Ding will retreat, here bishop to e7, e3 was played by Yu Yangi, but now knight to f6, liberating of course the long diagonal for the light square bishop. Bishop to d3, queen to d8, here kingside casting, here knight to f3 was played by Yu Yangi. He wanted to occupy the weak square in e5, and we have talked about also previously these ideas. Don't allow him to jump with the knight on e5 in a good way, because his idea here of white is of course to play knight to e5 and then f4. If he cements the position around the square e5, if he cements the position on dark square, then of course the powerful long diagonal over the light square bishop and the queen will be something devastating here for black. So that's why here Ding played a really beautiful move, bishop to d6, rook to e1, rook to e8, and now you tried here e4. Okay, you have at least some kind of an idea, but I think this is rushed because you're leaving yourself here an isolated pawn on d4, which is of course a structural weakness. Knight to e4, bishop to e4, and now with g6 f5 here Ding is trying to kick away the bishop. In the continuation we have queen to b3, here Ding develops the queen in a beautiful way, a rook to e2, and now beautiful move here again by Ding Liren, bishop to e6, because the move queen to b7 is not working. Bishop to c4 will hit both of these rooks, and you lose simply too much decisive material. So in the continuation, after bishop to e6, queen to c3 was played, rook to d8, rook to e1, bishop to c8, keeping the rooks connected but also retreating with the bishop, finally protecting the pawn on b7, but also staying active here on this long diagonal here against white's king. So in the continuation, bishop to c2, rook takes e2, rook takes e2, c5. It's of course time to open the position because we have the bishop pair, knight to e5, c takes d4, queen to d4, and now a beautiful tactic, bishop to a3, bishop to b2. Here after a couple of moves, Ding Liren went into a favorable endgame where he had situation where he was up a pawn, and this is now of course completely winning. Of course you have to still struggle, you have to still battle, but this was the way to go, and Ding Liren eventually won the game. So as I said, let's go back. Very important stuff, I think. After move h3, my recommendation is to go knight to e4. Simplification, a very aggressive line. We are threatening ideas of bishop to b4, queen to a5. That are the common ideas. Also queen to b6 we have seen. Don't worry about this idea, knight to e4, d takes e4, because it's not so easy for white to play the game after knight to d2. As we said, we can still protect it. Bishop to b4, queen to a5 is still working, so the d4 pawn is weak. The bishop is a little bit loose here on f4, so in my opinion really an important sideline. So okay, this is now our last video about the Sämisch variation. maybe we'll cover more if maybe some games have will be played in tournaments or something. That will add it, of course, into the playlist. But as a study, this is it for the Sämisch Variation. The continuation will do some other opportunities of the Queen's Gambit Declined, and I think we have to study this opening more because it's the most common opening, and you see now in top grandmaster level these ideas are very often played and they are very popular, so we want to of course know what's going on now on the board. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the analysis. As I said, here's the whole playlist of our Queen's Gambit Declined studies. Here's the link, more than 80 videos you have there in order to prepare yourself in the positional battle of the Queen's Gambit Declined. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. What to say, chess is the best, of course.